blind date surprises, a janitor's touching journey revealed to transform an entire boardroom. Mike stood on the pristine marble floor of the downtown Chicago skyscraper, heart heavy with the weight of looming layoffs. 20 years as a janitor had turned his once bright future into grinding monotony. Each day, he scrubbed away the remnants of catered lunches and polished the floors that reflected the ambitions of others. But today, fears simmered just beneath the surface. The walls of the boardroom became a labyrinth of conflict, where the executives whispered about cutting costs that might include his job. Each hollow laugh echoed around him like a knife twisting deeper into his chest. He glanced toward the CEO's office, which shimmered with status and power. A world away from his own, where hope felt like a long-lost currency. The disgrace of losing his job gnawed at him, tormenting him with thoughts of failure. Was this his legacy? Years spent in the shadows of greatness while he possessed a mind for numbers, a treasure buried under mops and cleaning supplies. He recalled his father's words. Knowledge is a treasure meant to be shared. Yet, here he was, invisible among the elite. The thought festered in his gut, could he really reveal his mathematical abilities? Would they ridicule him, or would they finally see him? Desperation tightened around him as he swept through the halls, heart racing. How could he be both a janitor and yet possess a gift that lay dormant within him? Before he could spiral too far, a commotion broke out in the lobby. A team-building blind date event was underway, a last-minute idea to foster camaraderie among executives that frankly felt like a desperate attempt to mask the escalating tensions. Mike felt a swirling storm of unease. What if he was called in to play a role, as he often did in scenarios designed to amuse the suits? As dread pooled in his stomach, an image formed in his mind. Him, stuck in a corner with another board member, lost in an overwhelming sea of false smiles and forced laughter. Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. With each tick of the clock echoing his internal turmoil, Mike was pushed back to facing the reality of these cuts. But fate intervened when his name was called. To his shock, he found himself paired with the CEO. Between them was an abyss of privilege that separated their worlds. The tension crackled like static in the air. It was a confrontation of sorts. Mike swallowed hard. This was his chance, but also his greatest fear. Feeling the scrutiny of the executives burn into him, he was engulfed in anxiety, the weight of the moment pressing against his chest. How could he share his knowledge when he felt like a ghost in this setting? No matter how brilliant his ideas might be, the odds were stacked against him. As he awkwardly introduced himself to the CEO, a mix of dread and determination flooded through him. Doubt gnawed at him. Would he earn their respect or remain unseen? Each second that passed pushed his courage to the brink, caught between the sticky threads of his past and the unknown future ahead. In this corridor of power, where ambition overshadowed those who worked tirelessly behind the scenes, Mike realized that standing up was no longer an option, it was a necessity. But just as he prepared to reveal the depth of his mathematical prowess, the stakes escalated, leaving him teetering on the edge of transformation. Would their perceptions reshape, or would the relentless grip of prejudice pull him back into the shadows? Mike stood face to face with the CEO, the vast chasm between their lives more palpable than ever. He could feel the weight of expectation in the air, how it pulled at him, drawing on all the doubts he'd gathered over the years. As he fumbled with his words, the world he had long occupied as a janitor flashed vividly in his mind: the scrubbing of floors, the quiet acknowledgement of visible hard work, but always in the background, never in the light. "You clean up after us, right?" the CEO remarked, his tone harmless yet underlined with a subtle mocking inflection that a flush of humiliation crossed Mike's face. But instead of retreating into silence, something ignited within him. He couldn't let this be another moment lost to pity or marginalization. The mere thought of years of potential choked back by fear and resignation surged within him. He steadied his breathing, the adrenaline turning his anxiety into a harnessed energy. "Yes, but I'm also good at numbers," he replied, surprising himself with the sharpness of his voice. The room fell silent, ensnared by the unexpected revelation. Freeing thoughts clamored in his mind. This was his moment not just to speak, but to shape how he was perceived. He had spent too many years allowing his identity to be defined by his title, but it didn't have to end here. The CEO raised an eyebrow. "Numbers? You mean cleaning schedules?" A wave of indignation pushed Mike forward. "No, I mean financial projections, budgeting analysis. I taught myself to calculate estimates while clearing out this very building. I've always had a gift for it." Skepticism flickered across the faces of the executives. As they exchanged glances, unease trickled through the room. The gamble he'd taken felt colossal. He was no longer an invisible man, and he was not just a janitor. "Prove it," the CEO challenged. "If you're serious, then what's the forecast for next quarter based on our current funding? Can you present it simply?" The challenge was audacious. Mike had maneuvered himself into a corner, yet the thrill of possibility buzzed in his veins. The stakes were high, but if he could pull this off, maybe he could carve a niche for himself within these sterile walls. "Sure," he managed to say, his pulse racing. He quickly sketched a simple projection on a nearby whiteboard. The numbers unfolded with a clarity he hadn't anticipated. As he established the base expectations and articulated the implications of recent hires versus revenue figures, he felt the tension in the room shift from disdain to intrigue. Behind him, he sensed the interest of other executives awaken. They leaned in, their earlier dismissiveness waning under the weight of intellectual engagement. He spoke of potential savings, unexplored opportunities, and cost reductions, all the things that might as well been locked behind a door he couldn't enter. With each word, he felt a veil lift, revealing not just his capabilities, but also the very real prospect of changing how he was seen. For the first time in years, he felt the embers of ambition flare within. This wasn't just about financial forecasts. It was about setting himself free from the chains of expectations. Just as he began to feel a surge of confidence and adrenaline, an unexpected voice interrupted. A senior manager stood up, skepticism alive in her eyes. "And how do we know you're not just making this up? What qualifies you to analyze our finances?" Her question ricocheted around the room. Self-doubt crept in again, sneering at his newfound clarity. Would this moment solidify his journey forward, or would her words push him back into his previous anonymity? The answer lingered in the air, waiting to see if he would seize this fleeting chance or retreat. Would he assert his worth further, or was it too late to turn back? The tension coiled tightly as he faced the room filled with those who could either elevate him or reinforce his invisibility. Mike locked eyes with the senior manager, the high stakes of the moment crystallizing in an instant of sheer will. Surrounded by a sea of uncertainty, he cultivated his resolve, aware that he stood at a pivotal juncture. Would he let the fear of exposure silence him, or would he embrace this opportunity to unveil himself? Drawing in a deep breath, Mike fought back the tide of self-doubt that threatened to drown him. "I've been observing the trends in our spending and the income generated for years. I've seen departments struggle with overlaps in budget allocations, while others face shortages due to budgeting errors. Just because I was cleaning the floors doesn't mean I didn't notice the financial patterns," he retorted, enunciating each word firmly. This was not merely an assertion. It was a declaration of identity. As he spoke, Mike felt the shift within himself. The years of grappling for acknowledgement transformed into a powerful, simmering confidence, driven by the need to be seen not just as a janitor, but as a capable individual with insights. He invoked the clarity of purpose that had long been dormant. "Let me show you the data I've compiled," he continued, his voice steady and increasingly persuasive. He prepared to share his projections beyond the whiteboard, certain he could substantiate his claims. In a flash of inspiration, he mentally cataloged resources and strategies he had crafted while working the night shifts. This time, possession of the knowledge felt less like a weapon of defense and more like an offering of trust. With careful precision, Mike elaborated on the company's cash flow. He suggested leveraging certain assets more strategically, highlighting each insight in a way that transcended numbers. The grips of doubt began to loosen as he heard the murmurs of interest, igniting a budding hope within him. This wasn't about proving his worth. It was about embracing possibilities. An additional 10% cut in unnecessary expenses would free up funds to innovate in departments that drive revenue. We're missing opportunities because of inefficiencies, Mike urged, gesturing emphatically to underscore his points. Faces that were once skeptical now bore expressions of curiosity, and he reveled in the shift. Just as Mike felt momentum surging his way, the same senior manager interjected again, a frown twisting her features. You've given a fantastic overview, Mike, but this is a lot of responsibility. What makes you think the board will value what you propose? Her words struck hard, the skepticism reigniting. For a fleeting second, he scanned a room filled with experienced executives, the gnawing hint of inadequacy rising within him. Past fears threatened to overshadow his newfound confidence. Yet, he drew upon the well of determination amassed through years of hard work and resilience. This wasn't merely a test of knowledge. This was a test of character. Because I've lived this company, I've internalized its pulse. Each oscillation matters, whether financial metrics, operational needs, or employee perspectives. When I walk these halls, I don't just see dirt. I see potential. The company deserves better insights than stagnation. In that moment, Mike found his voice, a pure reflection of his journey weaving together professional aspiration and personal conviction. Could they truly disregard the insights of someone who had witnessed the company's struggles from ground zero? The silence that followed his passionate plea felt interminable, but with every second, the weight of the room shifted. Executives whispered among themselves, their initial judgments clouded by newfound contemplation. He had claimed his space in their minds, and then an unmistakable seed of doubt crept back. What if this awakening was just a fleeting glimpse of hope destined to decay under their skepticism? The tension grew electric as the CEO, brow furrowed and arms crossed, leaned forward, summoning the authority of his position. You've intrigued some of my team, Mike. But what happens if these projections prove wrong? What is your plan? In that moment, the essence of vulnerability and fortune clashed. Mike realized this moment wasn't merely about knowledge. It was tied to embracing the risk of failure, a paradox he feared for so long. Could he truly answer the question of accountability? The challenge loomed large, and with it, a new chapter awaited to unfold. As the weight of expectation shifted yet again, Mike sensed that his journey had only just begun. The air thickened around Mike as the CEO's question hung ominously, a potent reminder of the stakes involved. He could almost feel the gaze of every executive piercing through him, assessing him not just as a janitor, but now as a potential leader. The weight of their expectations wrapped around him, tightening like a vice. His heart raced, mind whirring with possibilities and the undeniable pressure to perform. What happens if these projections prove wrong? Echoed in his thoughts. The fear of miscalculation pulsed through him, real and palpable. In that moment, clarity emerged. He had put himself in this position. Now he needed to own it. I'm prepared to back my projections with solid framework considerations, Mike voiced, using each word to bolster his resolve. I've identified a few key indicators that will guide our decisions. Mistakes can happen, but the focus should be on adaptability and learning. The determination in his voice resonated, and he found himself leaning into the gravity of the situation, a palpable shift pulling the executives into his energy. The CEO studied him discerning, almost hesitant. You want implementation without assurance? His brow furrowed deeper, skepticism evident. Mike felt a rush of adrenaline. This was not just about the numbers anymore. It was about altering perceptions, dismantling barriers rooted in traditional hierarchy. With that realization dawning, he dove deeper into his own insights. Success doesn't arise from infallibility. It's rooted in the resolve to innovate and reassess. Energy surged as he adapted his explanation on the fly, accentuating the urgency of risk-taking and the potential for reward embedded within it. It was not only his persuasion that mattered. It was the chance to instigate a cultural shift within the organization. The murmurs among the executives turned into curious nods, and for the first time, he sensed a dynamic shift. The prospect of collaboration, of melding the expertise of seasoned executives with his fresh perspective, fueled his vision. Let us establish a framework to measure our progress, he suggested, empowered by the growing acknowledgement of the executives around him. Weekly check-ins to reassess strategies, allowing us to pivot if necessary. I'm ready to put in the groundwork, analyzing data, discussing findings, integrating employee feedback. I want to shy away from accountability. Throughout his speech, a flicker of excitement ignited within him. It had transformed from a mere presentation to a collaborative venture, one steeped in potential. In that moment, clarity erupted. He wasn't just fighting for recognition. He was beginning to build something bigger than himself. Yet, the shadow of self-doubt emerged again as he concluded. Will they take him seriously? His pulse raced as he caught the CEO's critical eye. And who will you surround yourself with? You recognize you can't do this alone? The CEO pressed, voice edged with skepticism without a challenge. A confrontation he hadn't anticipated. I'll rally my colleagues. I want workers from all levels involved to create a sense of ownership. The floors I've cleaned don't need to dictate my vision. They're merely a backdrop to my ideas. His words spilled forth, unfiltered and true, each syllable punctuated with conviction. The CEO regarded him, the moment lingering like a live wire. It wasn't just a question of credibility. It was a test of persuasion, a reflection of the transformation Mike had undergone. Very well, Mike, the CEO finally replied, his voice deeper than before. You have our attention, but it will require more than passion. It demands results. As the meeting adjourned, Mike stood in a quiet daze, the adrenaline still coursing through his veins. The fear of failure loomed, but it was eclipsed by the thrill of opportunity. The road ahead might be fraught with challenges, yet an undeniable shift was occurring, an evolution born out of necessity and a fierce desire to be seen. And just like that, an ember of hope ignited in his heart. He could reshape perceptions and navigate the tides of organizational change, but first, he would need to solidify alliances. The reality of this task loomed heavy. How would he convince them to trust in his leadership? The moment had arrived to forge connections, to navigate the balance between respect and authority. With a renewed sense of purpose, Mike realized he was not merely stepping into a role. He was embarking on a journey towards self-discovery, a quest to redefine what it meant to transform a boardroom, and in doing so, perhaps, even reshape his own identity. As he left the room, Mike pondered who would align with him in this audacious ambition. Mike stepped out of the conference room, the weight of the executive's scrutiny heavy on his shoulders, yet ignited by an undercurrent of determination. The hallways buzzed with muted conversations, reminders of the corporate world's relentless pace. He needed to act quickly to turn this momentous opportunity into tangible results. His first destination was the break room, a space where colleagues congregated for coffee, laughter, and the occasional vent. He pressed his palms against the cool countertop, breath steadying as he formulated a plan. If he wanted to rally support, he had to start small but impactful. "Hey, Mike," called out Lisa, a fellow janitor whose upbeat spirit often brought warmth to their otherwise grueling shifts. "You all right? You looked intense back there." "Intense is one way to put it," Mike replied, a slight smile breaking through his focused demeanor. "Listen, I have an idea. I want to bring everyone together, our teams, especially the floor crew. I think if we join forces, we can make a real impact." Intrigued, Lisa leaned closer. "What do you have in mind?" "An informal meeting. I want to gather thoughts, suggestions, frustrations, whatever. Everyone has ideas. They just need a platform. Mike felt his voice gather strength as he spoke, realizing the potential for a unified voice. Yes, count me in. Lisa's enthusiasm surged, and that spark ignited something greater within him. Each additional voice would weave a web of support around his burgeoning plans. With renewed conviction, Mike set about scheduling meetings with his fellow janitors, creating focus groups where no contribution would be too small. He scrapped the hierarchical boundaries he had once felt. He was on equal footing, working alongside them. As the days passed, Mike discovered hidden talents among his colleagues. Maria, who, despite her cleaning role, had a background in data analysis, eagerly offered insights on how they could present their ideas to management. James, the quietest member of the crew, revealed an uncanny ability to pitch ideas effectively when given the right context. It was fascinating. Each interaction peeled back layers he had never noticed before. Mike began to see each colleague as a pillar supporting the collective ambition he was nurturing. His confidence flourished, but with it came a pressing thought. He would have to present their findings to the executives. The stakes were rising. Nervous energy surged within him as the scheduled day approached. He had practiced presenting ideas with the team. They projected enthusiasm and clarity, but as he prepped alone, doubt began to creep back in. Would the executives take them seriously? The night before, he replayed each discussion, the camaraderie a balm against his anxiety. He had seen how ideas blossomed when everyone contributed. What if he could replicate that atmosphere in the boardroom? On the morning of the presentation, he arrived extra early, the fluorescent lights flickering as if mirroring his heightened pulse. His team, arriving at intervals, greeted him with nods of recognition. Each face was a reminder of his commitment, grounding his spiraling thoughts. Once in the boardroom, he couldn't shake the CEO's skepticism. Results, the man had insisted. What would success look like? And how could he measure it against the backgrounds they all came from? Time to find out. As he set up the projector, a flicker of doubt threatened to overwhelm him. What if they didn't believe in their ideas? Would he be able to channel their potential effectively? The moment had come. The door swung open, and the executives filed into the room. Each face appeared as a weighty reminder of the journey so far. A breath caught in his throat. He approached the front, hope and trepidation battling for dominance. In that pivotal instant, Mike realized something profound. Transforming the boardroom wasn't solely about strategy. It was about connection and authenticity. He had the chance to unveil not just his vision, but the collective voice of every colleague who had entrusted him with their thoughts. Today, I'm not just here to present ideas, he began, his voice steadying. I'm here to introduce you to a team that reflects the strength of our entire organization. And as he stepped forward, the door to his next challenge swung open. Would the executives embrace this new vision rooted in collaboration, or would the walls of traditional hierarchy close ranks once again? As Mike's words lingered in the boardroom, an electric silence enveloped the room. He felt the weight of 1,000 expectations resting on him. Yet he breathed through the uncertainty. He had crossed a threshold, confronting the notion that his voice mattered, that the voices of his colleagues mattered. Flashing images of his team's faces surged through his mind, each one a reminder of the sweat and laughter shared in moments that had brought them closer. He gestured towards the screen, summoning up the slides that had transformed from simple document files into vibrant illustrations of collective hope. Together, we identified key areas where we can improve efficiency and morale. Our frontline experiences give us a unique perspective, Mike continued. He could hear some murmurs from the executives, his stomach flipping with apprehension. Could they see the vision he saw? As he navigated through each slide, Mike focused on the tangible data chemistries Maria had helped him with. The statistics demonstrated problematic areas alongside proposals, showcasing their combined insights. Glancing at the crowd, he spotted a few frowns, a skeptical eyebrow raised among the executives. Determined to transcend their doubt, he shifted gears. It's about more than numbers. Each of these changes can lead to genuine impacts. Imagine a workplace where every voice is valued, where we're not just janitors, but contributors to the company's success. Nervous but emboldened, he leaned into the authenticity that had driven him here. At a few executives exchanged glances, but Mike felt the air seem to thicken. Their skepticism remained apparent, but he refused to back down. We are not just cleaning. We hold insights that can save time, reduce waste, and create a culture of buy-in. Let me share our ideas. With renewed clarity, Mike began to expose the heart behind the data, illustrating the emotional intelligence of his team. As he wrapped up the presentation, a question hung in the room. Where have these insights been all this time? The phrase echoed in his mind as another executive leaned forward. You realize that we VE depended heavily on upper management for change, correct? But this vision relies on lower-tier input. How can you ensure our current leaders will listen? The question cut deeper than any he had anticipated. Would they dismiss his ideas to maintain a grip on power? The answer lay in how firmly he stood in this confrontation. Would he embody the change he spoke of, or falter in the face of opposition? Because we want to stop advocating for our contributions, Mike responded, feeling the resolve swell inside him. We refuse to remain silent. This is not a single presentation. It's the beginning of a new discourse. If you believe in the potential of every employee, you'll give a chance. Otherwise, we are on the verge of losing monumental insight. Silence permeated the room. Would this ultimatum persuade them? He sensed the tremors of shifting paradigms. The executives exchanged glances that seemed to account for every layer of him: his fear, his resolve. Mike felt exposed, yet exhilarated. As he stepped away from the podium, his heart hammered in a rhythmic anticipation, keenly aware that he had unlocked a part of himself. This was more than just a presentation. It was a battle for respect. He'd begun to realize the gravity of the influence he might truly wield. As he prepared for any potential responses from the executives, a thought struck him. What if this was only the first step? What lay beyond these moments could redefine the future, not just for him, but for everyone involved. His mind raced with possibilities when the lead executive slowly began to nod, a sign he was at least considering what Mike had proposed. Could this transform the dynamics of their professional landscape? Let us discuss this further, the executive finally said, catching Mike off guard. He could almost feel the shimmer of hope, but conjured questions that teased the other side. What would happen if the executives turned this moment into a negotiation tool rather than embracing the heartfelt shift Mike sought? The tension hung palpably, ready to burst, and Mike felt the significance of this moment sunken deep within him. Would he rise as a true advocate for his colleagues, or would this initial triumph merely lead to more pressing confrontations? The path ahead shimmered with uncertainty, but one thing was clear. Mike had stepped into a greater fight than he anticipated, and now he was ready. He couldn't know yet the true implications of standing firm in his authenticity or the obstacles yet to come. But ready or not, the lines had been drawn. The air crackled with a mixture of anticipation and dread as Mike left the boardroom, the echoes of the executive's agreement reverberating in his mind. It felt surreal, like he had crossed over into an unfamiliar territory where the stakes were higher and the expectations daunting. Each step down the hallway seemed to sink deeper into his newfound conviction. But with each heartbeat, that confidence battled the nagging seed of doubt. What if this was just a fleeting moment, one that could easily dissolve under the weight of stubborn leadership? As he reached his office, the familiar sense of cleaning supplies greeted him: detergents, disinfectants, the stale smell of mopped floors. Starting down the path of advocating for his team had felt like stepping into a whirlwind, and here he was back in the comforting chaos of his usual routine. He paused a moment, surveying the space he had inhabited for years, tinged with memories of hard work but void of recognition. It was a stark reminder of the stigma he was fighting against: his existence defined by the uniform, not by the insights he just presented. Mike sank into his chair, mind spinning with thoughts. Could he truly leverage this moment of potential to foster real change? He thought of his team, of the late-night brainstorming sessions in cramped break rooms, filled with raw passion that had never found its way up the management ladder. He felt an empowering urge to be their voice. But there was a sharp realization that this was a double-edged sword. Would he be viewed as a revolutionary or a threat? Before he could drown in this cycle of self-doubt, his phone buzzed. It was Maria, a friend and ally who had supported him through countless challenges in their workplace. "Did you see their faces? You held your ground, Mike. I'm so proud of you." Her message flashed across the screen. A rush of warmth enveloped him. Her words injected life into his wavering determination. Thinking of her made Mike reflect on the resources he had at his disposal. The experiences shared, the insights gathered, and the emotional intelligence that the front line possessed. It struck him, what if he didn't stop here? What if he could harness the collective strength of his team and share their stories with the board, converting their unique experiences into tangible strategies? They had the knowledge to innovate their environment, yet their voices had long been ignored. It was in this moment of clarity when he realized that he needed to shift from being merely a messenger to becoming an orchestrator. It required navigating a complex power landscape, understanding the fears of leadership and potential defensive tactics stemming from being challenged. How could he normalize the acceptance of insights shared from the ground level? He jotted down a list, key points to present at the next meeting, outlining how he would frame their contributions as essential rather than just supplementary. As he wrote, he felt a sense of empowerment washing over him. He was no longer just a janitor, but instead a beacon of innovation fostered by underrepresented voices. But as the excitement started to build, so did an unsettling question within him. What would his colleagues think when he approached them with these ideas? Would they be skeptical, fearing repercussions from an administration that had historically marginalized them? Mike felt an internal conflict stirring as he contemplated the risk of shattering the peaceful status quo they had settled into. Advocating for their input would mean taking a leap into the unknown for both him and his team. Each contribution would unearth vulnerabilities previously buried under layers of doubt. The first step was to gauge the sentiment of his colleagues, to collectively embrace this chance to speak out. There was a fear still lurking, tightening his chest, a fear of backlash, of being seen as disrespectful. But if he wanted to be the catalyst for their change and support their fighting spirit, he realized he had to confront that fear head dash onto the day turned toward dusk. Mike gathered his notes, steeling himself for the conversations ahead. The haunting question remained. Would it pay off? The sound of his own resolve echoed loudly in his mind as he envisioned the day he could stand before the board again, this time not just solo, but with his colleagues standing alongside him. The urgency was palpable, action was inevitable. But as he prepared to reach out to his team, a nagging doubt hovered over him. What if their collective voice was met with resistance strong enough to silence them all? With a deep breath, Mike rose to face a new day, the weight of potential resting squarely on his shoulders, ready to confront the challenges that lay ahead. The moment of truth was approaching. How far was he willing to go to create the change they all desired? Morning light filtered through the grimy office windows, casting a soft glow on the disarray of papers cluttering Mike's desk. He stared blankly at the notes he had scrawled, the ink smudged from his anxious grip. The weight of expectation pressed down on him. Today was not just another day, it was a chance to reshape the narrative that had vanished into the halls of negligence for far too long. How he approached this moment could either catalyze change or exacerbate the silence that had long enshrouded his team. Yet he hesitated, deep inside the looming shadows of self-doubt. What if they didn't believe in the power of their words? What if his own efforts felt hollow to them, dubbed as meddling by the administration? The gnawing fear of rejection paralyzed him for a moment, a visceral reminder of previous experiences where his aspirations had been extinguished before they even took root. Determined not to ruminate in that darkness, Mike pushed back his chair and rose. Each step toward the staff break room felt monumental, a journey from the safety of his cocoon into the volatile unknown. He characterized himself not as a janitor, but as an intermediary, a bridge between mesmeric ideas and the hardened walls of corporate decision, as he entered the break room. It was flooded with murmurs and low laughter, his colleagues casually mingling over coffee and donuts. It was a scene he had witnessed countless times before, one that was both comforting and stifling. Deep down, he wished to shatter that complacent facade, to instigate something profound. "Hey, everyone," he called out, surprised at the steadiness in his voice. All heads turned towards him, curiosity dancing in their eyes. The moment felt charged with potential, their expressions mixed with interest and skepticism. "Could I have a moment?" He felt the simple query reverberate with the significance he had been searching for. Maybe, just maybe, this was the change they needed. That a few reluctant nods encouraged him, and he cleared his throat, his palms slick against the paper, holding his notes. "I want to talk about our ideas for improvement. I think we have voices that matter, and I believe we deserve to share this with the board." His words hung in the air, like a challenge thrown into the unknown. Reactions varied. Some looked intrigued, a glimmer of hope lining their expressions. Others exchanged apprehensive glances. "Are we really going to risk it?" Lisa, one of the more senior janitors, asked, her voice shaking slightly. "After all these years, do we really think they listen? Do they care?" "Maybe they won tea," Mike replied, feeling the intensity of the moment ignite a fire. "But that's what we need to find out. If we stay silent, nothing changes. I don't want any of us to feel like our hard work is invisible anymore." Mike's heart raced. He had stepped beyond the realm of mere suggestion. He was advocating for something profoundly personal, the dignity of his colleagues. And yet he sensed the tides in the room shifting. Doubt was palpable. Their apprehension was not misguided. Change was often met with mistrust in environments cloaked in habit. "I worry it'll backfire," said Thomas, arms crossed defensively. "We've seen how they handle feedback. It ends up being dismissed, and then we're perceived as troublemakers." He took a breath. "If they don't take us seriously, we owe it to ourselves to keep pushing, to hold them accountable. I believe this can be a valid opportunity, a chance for all of us to unify. But I need you to back me up." The room fell into silence, the weight of his proposition settling heavily. Discontent mixed with hope, creating an atmosphere of tension ripe for transformation. "I'll do it." A voice finally spoke from the back. It was Maria, her confidence reverberating into the void of doubt. "If we don't stand together, we might lose our chance." "I'll support you, Mike." Suddenly, others chimed in, a ripple effect of solidarity stirring beneath the surface. The momentum built like a wave swelling at sea, and Mike felt a rush of encouragement course through him. But as the group began to rally around his vision, a dark thought seared into his consciousness. What would happen when they were met with the full force of that resistance? With renewed resolve, Mike transformed that anxiety into determination. Each voice raised beside him would fortify an unshakable foundation. But if their stand was met with backlash, would he be able to protect them? The moment of truth loomed closer, like the fateful click of a clock. Would they join hands in this endeavor? Or would he be left navigating the treacherous waters alone? As they strategized, anxiety crackled in the air, the stakes crystallized. A clear question emerged. How far was he willing to go to safeguard not only his own aspirations, but those of every individual behind him? Mike's heart pulsed fast, ready to confront this decisive opportunity. But the foreboding weight of impending repercussions loomed just on the horizon. The future felt unsettlingly uncertain, and with every beat, he questioned whether he could truly orchestrate a vision of hope amidst such looming peril. The energy in the break room shifted as Mike felt the collective determination swell around him. The newfound conviction among his colleagues grounded his resolve, yet the anticipation coursed through him like an electric current. They were ready to take a step together, but that step meant facing the looming unknown. As they brainstormed possible strategies, Mike took note of the different personalities in the room. Maria's enduring optimism alleviated some of the tension, while Thomas remained skeptical, grasping at the edges of his doubts. Each perspective added a layer of complexity to Mike's plan. He realized that winning their thoughts and hearts would require more than just passion. It would demand tact and understanding. Let us define our goals, he suggested, scribbling a few key points on a paper towel. We need to be clear about what we want to address. The words unfurled like a map, guiding them through treacherous territory. If we can present a unified front, they have to take us seriously. The group pondered his suggestion, wrestling with their fears while grappling for clarity. They could oppose the status quo, but would they prepare for the inevitable clash? Mike's heartbeat picked up a notch as he confronted the reality his ability to lead hinged on how effectively he navigated their fears while also managing his own. I think we should list specific examples of problems we face daily, suggested Lisa, her voice steadier now. If we can show them how these issues affect our work, maybe they'll see us as more than just janitors. Fueled by Lisa's insight, Mike felt a spark igniting his creativity. Here was the chance to showcase not just their concerns, but their dedication. The realization sank in deeper. They weren't merely advocating for their rights, but illuminating their invaluable roles. It wasn't about presenting themselves as victims. They possessed insights that could genuinely enhance workplace dynamics, that a warmth filled the room as ideas flowed freely. They discussed everything from the lack of recognition for their hard work to the disarray most of the cleaning supplies suffered in the stockroom. A genuine, evolving dialogue lifted his spirits. Encouraged by the acceleration of collective voices, Mike felt himself less an empty vessel and more a resilient leader. History had taught Mike that advocating for change often came with backlash, and as the meeting progressed, shadows of doubt returned. He couldn't shake the escalating weight of accountability. Would he be the one responsible if their efforts were met with ridicule? Caught in a wave of emotion, he turned introspective. This venture wasn't merely personal. It became a crucible for self-exploration through the lens of leadership. He questioned whether he was ready to shoulder the potential consequences for his colleagues, not just if they failed, but if he put himself out there in a way that left others vulnerable. Yet amidst the rows of thoughts crashing against one another, clarity emerged. If he faltered here, out of fear, what message would that send? His colleagues placed their trust in him. The allies he saw before him deserved not just a champion, but a steadfast protector. In a sudden burst of inspiration, Mike gathered them closely. Let us arrange a time to present our ideas. Each of us stands to contribute a piece of our experiences. Together, we'll create a narrative that unites us. He felt the energy release in the room, an acknowledgement of courage shared. They could challenge the inertia together, encompassed by a mutual understanding that transcended their roles as janitors. As the meeting concluded, Mike stood clear-headed yet exhausted, feeling the weight shift from individual apprehension to collective resolve. They could either fade into obscurity or blaze a path forward. The choice was theirs, but as he exited the room, doubt clawed under his skin. Would they truly cohere into an impactful force, or would the looming corporate machine grind their aspirations to dust? The questions loomed larger than life, amplifying the thrill. And fear intertwined in the undertaking. Standing at the doorway, Mike paused, inhaling deeply. The road ahead would require not just assertions of change, but unyielding tenacity and strategy against unseen forces. The first moment of truth had passed, but the real question forged ahead. Would he be capable of rallying them through a deeper confrontation when the boardroom doors swung open? The morning sun streamed through the glass windows of the boardroom as Mike took a deep breath, clenching his notes tightly. The sound of footsteps echoed behind him, signaling the arrival of the executives, and he felt an exhilarating mix of anxiety and determination bubbling within him. Today wasn't just about presenting ideas. It was a culmination of everything he, along with his colleagues, had worked toward. With each passing second, he could feel the weight of the moment intensify. The room was set, the projector was whirring softly, and as the executives settled into their chairs, their skepticism hung thick in the air. He glanced around. A subtle nod of encouragement from Maria grounded him. It was time to unleash the power of the collective wisdom he had fostered among his team. Thank you all for being here today. This isn't just my voice. It's the voice of every janitor here. United in our insights and experiences, Mike began, his voice steady and resolute. He stepped forward, flipping to the first slide, which showcased the first of their collaborative recommendations. With a few clicks, he unveiled the statistics. They had painstakingly gathered numbers that highlighted inefficiencies that could be tackled through foundational changes. As he articulated their points, he noticed a shift in the atmosphere. Curiosity began to replace skepticism as he detailed how improving inventory systems could streamline their work, enhance efficiency, and ultimately elevate workplace morale. Each slide illustrated not only valuable insights, but the collective potential of an often overlooked workforce. He visualized his colleagues standing solidly behind him, their unwavering trust emboldening his conviction. Yet, the challenge remained stark in his mind. How would the executives react? With each small change, we can enhance not only our work, but also the entire organization as success. He emphasized using discernible data to support his claims. Every statistic showed a projected increase in efficiency. Every insight was tied to the shared memories of his peers' hard work. But then came the moment of truth. The CEO raised an eyebrow, leaning closer. And what makes you confident that you can implement these changes? This requires substantial trust in your leadership capabilities. Mike fought against a rising knot of anxiety coiling in his stomach. Because we've lived within this company, day in and day out. We understand its pulse. Our insights aren't just theoretical. They're forged in the daily realities we manage, he proclaimed, the assertiveness in his voice ringing strong. He felt a ripple of support among his colleagues behind him, standing shoulder to shoulder. As the presentation progressed, Mike's throat constrained at a juncture he had expected the resistance. The same senior manager from earlier interjected, her voice dripped in doubt. But how can we be sure this isn't just wishful thinking? You're asking us to trust a team that has traditionally been overlooked. Mike's resolve only deepened. We refuse to be overlooked, but we need your partnership. Direct engagement from every level of the company will yield better results. It will show the commitment to valuing diverse insights, he countered. The tension became palpable. The executives exchanged skeptical glances, yet amidst the silence, Mike sensed the room shifting. This was not just a presentation. It was a declaration, and he wasn't about to let hesitation undo the progress they had made. If we expect to drive innovation and stretch boundaries, we cannot operate in the confines of traditional hierarchies, he stated firmly. True collaboration is needed. In the ensuing moments, clarity cascaded through Mike. Regardless of the outcome, he had dismantled a barrier defined by fear. The seeds of transformation had been sown within that room. With every concluding remark, he felt a growing weight lift. I stand here not merely for recognition, but to anchor a culture of transparency, one in which every individual's contribution, regardless of title, merits consideration and respect. Silence reigned for a few breathless seconds. Then, a steady clap erupted from a few of the lower executives, sparking others in the room. The momentum grew, encouraging them. Mike couldn't distinguish whether he was inhaling hope or fear, but either way, he felt raw enthusiasm swell within. Finally, the CEO spoke again, his expression contemplative. You've given us a lot to consider, Mike. This approach is intriguing. We'll review the proposals and discuss how to best implement your ideas. I think there is potential here. As the meeting adjourned, Mike felt an overpowering sensation of triumph wash over him. This was more than a successful presentation. It was validation, recognition, and above all, a reshaping of his identity. No longer just a janitor, he had emerged as an advocate for change, combining his insights with those that had once been marginalized. The journey was far from over, but for the first time, he could envision the organizational shift he had always dreamt of. He stepped outside, the world beyond the skyscraper feeling renewed. Each breath tasted of possibility, and as he considered the path ahead, he would forge it with his colleagues, side by side. And at that moment, he acknowledged not only the transformation within himself, but also the collective strength they wielded. An awakening that had just begun. As he left the building, a voice within urged him. This was the moment to share this uplifting story, to show others that transformative change starts from within. Now is the time for you to take action. Subscribe immediately to ensure you don't miss the next exclusive emotional stories. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm and enable more inspirational journeys like Mike's to reach those in need. Comment below your reactions and theories about this remarkable transformation, and share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to witness such powerful conclusions. Join the movement of change. Don't wait even one more second to support our channel.